Okay, Eric, give us our Star Trek trivia, please.
Okay, I almost passed this one up because it's so simple, but I don't want to always just go to the hard ones because, well,
For my benefit.
Yeah, for your benefit.
Right.
What did Worf call a warrior's drink? A, coffee. B, blood wine. C, prune juice. Or D, Roctagino.
Get him. Get him.
And
That's a fighting word right there.
Welcome to A Piece of the Action. I'm Micah.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Greg.
And today we are going to be reviewing Terraforming Mars, a game from 2016 by Jacob Frixelius or something.
I think that's right.
For that effect.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Pronunciation issues aside, we're going to take a look at it. This game has a player count of 1 to 5, says an average playing time of 120 minutes. So we're going to get into taking a deeper look at it today. Before we do, though, just a quick reminder to please subscribe to us if you have not, as well as leave us a comment after the video to tell us what you think. But now we're going to go ahead and get right into an introduction to Terraforming Mars. All right, so to talk about the introduction to Terraforming Mars, a premise, and a little bit of maybe of an overview of how you play, let's go to Greg. Greg, can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, so Terraforming Mars is the idea of, well, you're terraforming Mars. It's the goal of the players are having here is basically you have to get Mars to 3 conditions and the game ends. You have to get so many oceans on Mars, you have to bring the temperature up to a certain level, and you got to get oxygen percentage up to a certain level. Basically, the actions that players take, anytime they contribute to that, they start getting points. So whoever has the most points when the game ends wins. So the way that's mostly done is through, it's a tableau building game. So if you've played anything like San Juan or Race for the Galaxy or a Wingspan, it's got a similar idea. You get cards that you can play in front of you, and those cards that they stay in front of you and they basically enhance the cards you play in the future. And those cards will tell you to do things. They allow you to possibly build cities on Mars, which gets you points. Perhaps they let you put oceans on Mars, or they raise the temperature, or they bump up how much money you're making each turn, or how much energy you can produce each turn. There's a bunch of things going on. But that's the basic idea, is you're playing these cards that kind of synergize off each other to work towards terraforming Mars and make it possible to inhabit.
Okay. All right, pretty straightforward. So let's then talk a little bit about how well it does when it comes to implementing that theme. Eric, what do you think about that?
Yeah, the theme is, as Greg mentioned, it's like you're terraforming Mars, but you play a particular company. So you each play a company with a special ability, and you're trying to be the best terraformer. And the way that's implemented, though, is it's there, but it really gets lost in the card abilities, I think. So as far as does the theme come through, you got to really look for it, because the work of tracing the flow chart of card activation is like, it's so all encompassing in this game. It's like, it's the bean counting of how many lichen cubes gets stolen by the ants before the comet destroys the leftovers. It completely disrupts any feeling of, in my opinion, of actual terraforming. The focus has to be on the little fiddly bits, and I can't exercise my imagination enough. There's a board there. The board helps a little bit, but really the board, it's just another point generator at the end of the game. And I did want to say something about what Greg said about the play. He mentioned it's a tableau building game, but actually that's true, but there's a lot of different mechanics in this game. It's engine building, it's tableau building, it's resource management, it's area control. It's even got a little bit of special powers with the companies. So there's a lot of stuff there's a lot of different things going on in this game. But the theme, in my opinion, it's there, but it's not really one of them.
Interesting. It's funny you say that, because I've always had the thought that in the back of my mind, sort of a not very important criticism of a lot of sci-fi stuff that I read is that I suspect that in the future there will be a lot more things like bean counting and bureaucracy and stuff like that than is ever actually depicted in sci-fi. But I understand that it probably doesn't have a place in a kind of a distilled down board game version.
Yeah,
although,
in an actual board game about
Yeah.
Terraforming Mars. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
probably if
you're
Mars
granted,
was
that's
actually
probably
terraformed, there would be a lot of that boring stuff.
no doubt, no
Right.
doubt. But that's not why we come to the table, I'm sure.
Right. So, okay. So what else do you guys want to say then about feel of play apart from the theme? How does it feel to play? And we'll open it up to both of you. Maybe Greg, you want to start off?
Yeah, I mean, it's Eric said it's got engine building. I think that's definitely the main theme I get from this. It's for me, it's a slow-moving engine in the beginning. It feels like it takes forever to get this engine going, but then it really ramps up towards the end. Beyond that, I would say this, like a lot of these kind of, I mean, and Eric's right, there's a lot to this game more than just tableau building, but for me, that's kind of the core mechanic it's built on. Like a lot of them, it's the focus on combos and trying to look for like the synergy of cards. That to me is the main feel. You look at that, you know, actually what it reminds me of, and I know I might get flack for this, but it actually reminds me a bit of CCGs. Like for example, if you play like Android Netrunner and you build decks, not the playing part of them, but the building the deck part. I would sit down and I could sit down for hours and just like look to the cards and go, oh, I think this card will work good with this card. I think this card works good with this card, and build a deck. That to me is kind of how this game feels. If I were to put a feel of play, it's like
I 100% agree with that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
totally true. The cards are really the core of this game.
Yeah. So for me, I guess that's what it is. It's that ramping up of the engine plus the trying to look for synergies among cards. If I were to define and distill the feel of play into a couple sentences, that would be it.
Yeah. Eric?
Yeah, same. On your turn, you draw a bunch of cards. You pay for the right to keep them. You perform one or two actions on your turn. You either play a card or you perform a standard action. There are some standard actions you can always do. And then later on, like Greg said, you've got all these cards in front of you, and they're going to, in the mid and late game, they're going to trigger, like in this splendiferous dance of Martian engine building, which gets you victory points, which are called terraforming rating in this game. And then it'll get you more resources sometimes. Sometimes it'll let you put something on the board. So like I said, all these things, all these different factors of the game, the engine building feel, the resource management feel, the area control feel, it's all really focused on the cards.
Okay. So a question I have then for both of you, would you say, because I could see you making the case for this, in general for tableau building games, since you're sort of, the tableau is the act of collecting a set of things that you're going to keep for yourself, for your personal use, which does seem like it would very much be almost exactly the same thing as deck building. So is that feel of feeling like you're playing a deck building CCG, is that something that's specific to Terraforming Mars, or is that just something that drops out of it by virtue of the fact that it's a tableau building game? What do you guys think?
I think, and just to be clear, when you say deck building, you mean like the building of decks for CCGs?
Yes. Right.
Okay, not like Dominion, which is a different thing.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's I think that comes. I'm going to get this later in the review, but I do think, yeah, I think just the nature of having a tableau building game. I think if you play, like I said, Wingspan, San Juan, Race for the Galaxy, Res Arcana, these are all like tableau building games that I think the core feels the same. Because that's just the whole thing. It's the synergy of your tableau with playing cards, and then your tableau fires and different combos pop out. You know, I think that's just the nature of this genre. Now, I think that where Terraforming Mars brings in extra layers is, like Eric mentioned, there's a lot more going on here. There's a map with area control. You're building cities and stuff next to each other, and placement matters, and there's more resources to handle. But yes, that core tableau building aspect does naturally give you that combo-y deck building nature. Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
Okay. let's talk a little bit about some of the priorities and strategies that a new player coming in to their first game of Terraforming Mars might want to keep in mind. Eric, would you like to go first?
Yeah, so this is, I'm curious to see what Greg will say on this. I think this is a lane game, a pick a lane game. I didn't think so at first. Remember when we first played this, Greg?
Lane, like a
lane.
highway,
Yeah, you
not
got
lane.
it.
Loud.
Yeah, yeah. Well, wait for it.
We're not to
Okay.
that part of the review, Eric.
Yeah.
It's a different section. Okay.
But yeah, at first I thought this was a game about diversification, but I think I was wrong about that. This is a game where the cards are roughly divided by cost. So what you do. My first piece of advice is look at your opening hand and see what type of cards your hand is focused on, and then decide that you're going to lean into that lane. Second point, money comes first. If you don't have money, you can't buy cards and you can't play cards. And that's the biggest part of the game. So you got to get your money going. Remember, there's different resources in the game. There's titanium, there's plants, there's even heat is a resource. But money is the one you want to get up and running first. Third point, play tactically. Don't buy a card unless you feel like you'll actually be able to play it on the next turn or two. Otherwise, it's just taking up space in your hand. Cards have this was an interesting discovery for me. The cards seem to have a pretty small window of applicability. So if you don't play a card when it's valuable, then it just becomes garbage in your hand. It's not really worth the action to play it. So don't get a card thinking, oh, I'll eventually be able to play this card, because it's just going to be sitting there in your hand doing nothing. So tactical play. This is a tactical game, in my opinion. It's not very strategic. Then after you've gotten a good rhythm with your cards, try to be the first. This is the fourth point. Try to be the first to buy a milestone or start an award. They're called awards, right, Greg?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Those are a couple of features of the game. Really cool feature where you can say, I've got the most terraforming rating, or I've got the most cards in my hand, so I'm going to buy that award. Or the even cooler part is the awards where you say, at the end of the game, I'm going to be the guy who has the most heat generated. And then so you start that award going. And then hopefully that you can get points if that's true at the end of the game. That's kind of cool. But try to be the first to get in on those, because there's a limited number that can be activated. Then while you're building on those awards and those milestones that you've started, try to get a couple of cities on the map. This is my fifth point. Try to get a couple cities on the map and surround them with forests. Forests are excellent point generators in the end of the game. And then finally, this isn't really doesn't fit really anywhere, but I would suggest that you don't forget about standard projects. Standard projects are things that they are a little more expensive than you probably want them to be, but oftentimes it's better to pay that extra money to get the thing that you want right now than to wait until you have the perfect combo that lets you do it for a little bit cheaper. So just remember that there's standard projects that you can always do throughout the course of the game. So those are my 5 or 6 beginner tips.
Okay, very nice. Greg, what about you?
Yeah, I think I line up loosely with what Eric said here. I think with almost any engine building game, I agree. You want to get your production going early. I do think money is a big one, but I do think titanium and I forgot what
Steel.
Iron, steel. Steel, I think, is the other one. Those are all can
steel.
be used as money if it's just for certain projects. I think early on, yeah, get those going as much as you can. And I agree that you should be choosy about what you buy, because you get a hand of cards and you pay $3 for each one you want to keep. So you got to make sure you're not paying for cards that you're not going to use. So I think I think it's common to just want to buy everything, but I think you have to be careful with that. You got to make sure you can actually play the card. You can pay for it. But beyond that, this is one of those kind of games where I think if you really wanted to be good at it, you just kind of have to learn the deck. To me, that's what this game boils down to, because in the beginning, you don't really know what synergies exist. It's like, is this card good? Is it cheap? Is it a good value for this? I don't think in my mind, like if you were to go online and look at strategy guides from like expert players of this game, I would imagine they would have lists of cards with grade ratings next to them. That's just kind of how it is. So I mean, that's kind of not good for a new person strategy, but I think that's really what this game boils down to, is just getting familiar with the deck. So I also agree that Eric said it's a find your lane game. I do agree in that you kind of have to choose a couple of options you're going for. Like this game, I'm going heavy into plants and cities or something like that. Or this game, I'm going to go big titanium projects. I think, yeah, early on in the game, you kind of have to choose where you're going and kind of focus on that. So I do agree with that part. And I think, but I do think a big part of this game, though, is learning how to work what's given to you. I think it's one of those kind of games where you don't always get the cards that you want, and looking at them and figuring out, okay, well, how can I make what I have work? So that's part of it. And I know it's a very abstract, high level idea, but yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Get your production going, but if you really want to get good at it, you just got to get familiar with the deck. So that's really where I stand on it.
It's a little like Twilight Struggle in that sense. The deck is huge. There's a big deck of cards, and it's all over the place. It's like giant asteroid or grass, and they all do different things. But you have to. I almost feel like the deck is so big that it kind of is the opposite of what you're. I agree that it helps to know the cards, but the chance that you're going to get any particular combo is so. That's why I say it's a tactical game. You got to look at what you've got, and I guess you agree with that in the sense that you say you got to play what you're given. You can't really plan for getting anything in particular though, because the deck's so big.
No, I don't think you can plan, but I think like, okay, I get my first opening hand of 10 cards. Which of those are good? Hey, when you first time you play it, hey, this is a plant card. I have no idea how many plant cards there are. This one gives me a Jovian tag points. How many Jovian tags are in the deck?
That's true. Yeah,
you know what
if
I mean?
you go
It's
with
like
a Jovian thing, there's not many in the deck.
Yeah, see, until you know what's in the deck, it's kind of hard to put a price on those cards.
Right. And how often they come up.
Yeah, until you get familiar with the game.
Right.
Which is, true. I mean, that's fine. This isn't a plus or a minus. It's just a strategy tip. But I do think, yeah, that to me, that part of getting good at this game is just through that experience of learning the deck.
So let me ask you this: if you say that if you both agree that it's sort of a find your lane type of game where you don't really win by being overly diversified, is there because what I would worry about is then that as you play more and more, that there's going to be one lane that's always better, right? And that is, that there's going to be sort of a clear optimum strategy. Is there enough randomness in the game from other things to prevent that from being a factor, or there's just too many cards? Does that not really come up, or do you think that there is a danger of that happening?
It's random.
It's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's something to be said for that. I think there's a lot of plant cards. There's a lot of building cards. There's not many cards with tags like Earth tags or Jovian tags and stuff. So if your starting hand, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later too, but the starting hand defines to me too much of this game. So when you look at your starting hand, and if you just happen to have a hand that's got a bunch of Jovian cards in it, well, cool. Okay, maybe that'll work for you. But I think the chances of it working are slimmer than like a plant-based strategy. But the problem is like you just kind of have to go with what you're given. So if you get given a bunch of Jovian cards up front and you're like, okay, I guess that's my strategy for this game, I think that the chances of you winning are maybe slightly less than if you're given like steel cards or plant cards.
Well, I'm going to disagree there because I think the Jovian cards are pretty powerful. But I think the point Mike is asking, if I'm right, is you're asking, can I just start the game going, hey, I know plant technology is the strongest. I'm going to go there. And I don't think that's possible because it's going to depend on the card you draw.
I don't know. I did last game. I mean, I barely won, but that's what I did. I went in thinking I'm going to go with a plant strategy no matter what, and it worked out.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I don't think this is the kind of game that's just like I'm gonna go plant strategy is overpowered and I can always win with plant strategy.
Well, I would say I don't think this is a fully balanced game for sure.
It may not be, but I think it's because of the way the cards go. If I have no plant cards in my hand in the beginning, I don't think I can just. If that's the case, then every Terraforming Mars expert player would just go plant strategy every single game. And
Maybe they do. I haven't looked it up.
No, I don't think that's true. I think this game, the strategies are balanced enough. There's enough randomness in this game that if you try to force a strategy based upon the cards, I think you will lose the game. Yes, you won by like 2 points in our last game, but that's because I suck. That has nothing to do with your skills.
You don't suck. We rocked that game. We got an average game I have heard is around 70 to 90 points, and we got like 125.
Yeah,
but that'd just be a lack of defense.
not to toot my own horn. When I did wash 2 of you guys, it was the plant strategy I was using.
Yeah, and I won last game with the plant strategy.
But I think our sample size is way too small here to be
I know. So
declaring that plants are overpowered.
I'm just saying, looking at the size of the deck, there's no way that this is a fully balanced game that has been play tested. I mean, the deck is massive and there's so many things going on, so many interactions and iterations. There's got to be something that's better, right?
No, I agree, but I'm just saying the idea that I'm going to go into the game with this strategy because it's overpowered, I think is the wrong way to approach this game.
Well,
I think this game is about working with what it gives you. Right. I think it's about working with what, to me, that's how I think about the strategy of this game, is working with what's given you. Okay. Right? And yes, and maybe as I get better, I can go, okay, well, I have a few choices I can go with here, and I think this strategy is better than this one. But I don't think I can just go in and win every time saying, that's it, plants are bust.
The whatever imbalance there is, it's not sufficient to, it's not to that degree. That
I don't think so. I think you
and there's a level of opacity there, right? And like you just can't know, like not unless you really study this game, and ain't nobody got time for that.
Right. Well, and then one other question, just to be clear, because we've differentiated before when we talk about a find your lane game, the difference between a game where you need to find your lane because trying to do what somebody else is already doing will actively hurt you. That's one type versus just being focused on one thing because the act of diversification, it's not like you're going to get in anybody else's way or they're going to get in your way, but just it spreads you too thin. Does it hurt you to have other people trying to do the thing that you're doing, or is it just
only vaguely in the sense that
thin?
Only vaguely in the sense that they're going to be taking some portion of those cards from the deck, and probably more so. I think that is accentuated if you play with the drafting rules, which I'm sure Greg's going to mention later. When you draft, which is in a variant, I think that's probably the case, even more so.
Okay. Yeah, in fact, I was going to mention this. I don't normally when we say find your lane, which I think we made this up, this term, this find your lane game, I think is when I think of that term, I think more along the lines of I'm choosing this, and now I'm choosing this because no one's in it.
Right. I
don't think that's necessarily true here.
I want to distinguish between find your lane versus just a more general principle of having to focus.
Yeah, I was going to mention it because you brought the term up. Yeah, I don't think it's a find your lane game in that way. I think it's a slight benefit to being in something no one else is in, but I think the interaction in this game is low enough that it doesn't hurt you too much to be in the same strategy as someone else.
Well, I think we have alluded to it, but we'll go ahead then and get right into now talking about the good and the bad. What did Terraforming Mars do well, Eric?
So there's always a certain amount of fun that comes from an engine builder. Engine builders, there's a certain funness to them. It's just fun. It's rewarding to watch all the cards trigger, getting the combos just right, and watching all the goodies come in. I mentioned it before, but I really like that award activation idea. So it's an exciting gamble. It adds a kind of a gamble to the game, because you have to basically turn on a big point generator that's going to trigger at the end of the game, but somebody else could be better than you at that and get that reward. So you have to think to yourself, do I have enough of an engine going where I know that I'm going to be the best heat producer at the end of this game? Then I'll turn that, then I'll activate that, that award. But so I think that's kind of cool. I also like the fact that once you've done that, it gives your turns a little more focus. So it's not as random, like I don't know what I'm going to do. Now you know what you're trying to do to a certain extent. So that's fun. And then, like I said, the game checks a lot of boxes. So, you got the engine building, you got the resource management, you got the area control, you got the special powers. So there's a pretty good chance that most of your players are going to like one or two of those styles, at least in theory. So, it probably will hit the table a lot.
All right, very good. Greg, what did you like about Terraforming Mars?
Basically, I already said that this game is kind of a low interaction game, and it's not super low, but it's lower than I typically care for. But for me, if a game's gonna be low interaction, then the puzzle that I am working on as a backup plan needs to be engaging and fun. At least give me that, and I think this is. I think the engine here is fun. There's a certain Eric talked about the engine building. I think it's true. There's a certain kind of like dopamine filled hits that you get from this game, especially as you get to, because you start so slow in this game, and by the time you get to the end of this game, every time you play a card, it's like just combos are just popping off everywhere. There's satisfaction to that. That's fun. And I already talked about how I feel this game feels like the actual building of decks in, like, say, Android Netrunner. Honestly, when I play those games, building decks I almost enjoy more than playing the game. so this is a particular part of my brain that I enjoy, getting pricked here. It's like this looking for synergy. It's fun. And I think there's enough synergies in this game. It's a deep enough game. There's enough going on in this game that I feel you can play multiple times and try different types of synergies. Like, I'm going to go a different path here. I'm going to look for animals or pets or microbes or something. There's all sorts of different paths you can take. I think there's enough here that you can play multiple times and not try the same synergies often. And if it does interest you, this game has a ton of expansions. So I feel like the life here is fairly strong. And I will bring up, I do like the awards and milestones. Eric mentioned them. I think it's cool anytime a game says, here's some end game bonuses, but you have to pay to activate them. That's kind of neat with awards. So and that brings some a little more interaction in this game that I enjoy. So those are cool. And also, I do, even though it's not very strong, I wish more games did this type of theme. Well, I mean, I know Mars is like the hot topic right now, so it's a common theme. But I do like the Mars theme. I enjoy it. There's little bits of science you can pick up if you actually read the cards and look at them, read the quotes on them. There is some good science behind this game that I enjoy. But I agree that doesn't come through in the mechanisms. But I still enjoy it. It's better than another generic theme. So those are my goods, probably.
All right. So it's that that near future hard science exoglobalization
I think
again.
So. I think it's pretty well researched too. It's not science fiction. It's more closer to the hard
Robinson
science end, I would say.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, then let's go to the negatives. Greg, what did you not like about Terraforming Mars?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've already said it is low interaction. I mean, I think it's like light medium. It's not quite non-interaction, but there's not your interaction here comes from if you play with the draft, which basically I think you must. If you play with a draft, there's interaction there because you can hate draft, which I think you need to. There's interaction on the actual Mars, so like where you're putting your cities and your oceans and stuff like that. There's some interaction there, and there's some interaction with the milestones and the awards because it's kind of like a first come first serve type system. But other than that, you're mostly just, you got your tableau in front of you, and you're doing your own thing in your own little corner. So that's always going to kind of get a knock from me. I will also say that once you kind of get into your synergies, once you decide from the beginning what path you're taking, towards the end of the game, your choices of the cards you're going to take, to me, just become automatic. I don't even think there's a choice at that point. It's like, okay, well, this is the strategy I want. This card works. This card doesn't. I know I'm buying. You know, so I just, anytime a decisions become automatic, I'm not a huge fan of that. Card drafts are, or not card drafts, it's the card draws. You get 4 cards at the beginning of your turn, and that's what you get. I do feel that's a bit random. Now, I do think the game is about working what you're given, but only seeing 4 cards a turn seems weak to me. You can fix that with the draft. That helps a ton. But it's, I don't know. I don't know. I wish you could see more of the deck. There's not a lot of technologies you can put in your tableau to dig into the deck more either. So if you are looking for cards, it's just really difficult to do so. I kind of prefer
That's
that.
true. I didn't think about that. There's absolutely, I don't think I ever saw really, well, I think there's a few cards, but they only give you like, look at the top 4 or something and choose one. But for the most part, there's no milling really of the deck.
Yeah, there's no milling, and there's no like, there's a couple of cards that allow you to draw a card or two. I don't know, like there's a way you can cycle cards in your hand sometimes, like, oh, discard 1 and draw 1, but it wasn't that extensive. So I understand. And just because I know people don't say this, I know the game is about working what you're given. I get that, but I just kind of wish there was more ways to search the deck. But I think, okay, but let's get down to the final one, the one that to me really kind of kills this game for me. I just think this game is too long and it just drags. That's just my ultimate thing on it. For what it is, I like long games, but I think this game overstays its welcome. And the reason is because, one, players' turns can take a while. This is a very much an AP producing game here, analysis paralysis. And by the end, the players are keeping track of so many symbols in their tableau. It can take a while. Because like you play one card and you got to look like 40 cards in your tableau to see, okay, this triggers this, this triggers this, triggers this. I'm okay with long turns if they're interesting to me, but they're not, because the interaction in this game is so low that pretty much what the other players are doing doesn't affect me, right? So I'm just having to wait for my turn to go around as people are taking you. Maybe as you get an expert and you become much faster as game, it moves, but I just felt it dragged on too long. And even, you know how in Agricola we talked about how like the engine got to a certain point, and just as it's about to get going, it stopped.
I was going to mention Agricola, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this game, man, it lets you take your engine around a few blocks before it stops. I feel like my engine's long burning, and we're still playing the game, and I'm like, okay, I mean, I've done what I needed to do with it. I don't need to go out and do loops with it, you know.
Right. Well, and especially if you're saying that those last turns are automatic anyway, right?
Well, the cards that you're, yeah, I mean, they do kind of become automatic to a degree. Once you get your, it's just a matter of bookkeeping at that point. It's just making sure I'm triggering all the cards I need to trigger. So now, and previously I did say, I feel like you must play with the draft in this game. I just feel like it's an automatic to me, but that just makes the game go even longer. So I just feel like for what it is, for what this game is doing, I just feel like it drags on a little too long. I think 3 players is kind of like my upper limit for this game. It can go to 5. I can't imagine playing that because I just don't know what adding extra players is going to do for me. So that's probably my biggest complaint of the game. I just think it drags on too long. I will put one little component issue I have with the game. The way they track resources on these little tracks that you just move these cubes up and down. And if you ever bump that player board, you pretty much lose your entire state of game. So I just thought they were kind of weirdly designed. I know there's like little plastic oversets you can buy to put on top of them so they're on tracks.
They need to really be recessed. With the amount of money, maybe they've done this already, but with the amount of money that Terraforming Mars has made, they really should do the double layered like Scythe.
So double layered boards are stupid expensive. I know why games don't do that. I understand that, but I just think there could have been a better way. I don't know. There could have been a better way of doing it. Maybe let's just say this: it's not a huge negative, but maybe you need to buy plastic overlays for this game, unless you're just really careful and never bump the board. But to me, that's a small thing. Component issues are a small thing, the biggest one is I just feel it drags on too long for the fact that it has not a lot of interaction.
Okay. All right. And you would say specifically it is that not just that it's too long, but that the ending should be chopped off, not that it should go faster in general, maybe.
Well, it's a combination of all of that, right? It's I do feel it goes on a few turns too long, in addition to the fact that players' turns can start to drag on, and I don't care about the players' turns.
Right.
So all of that combined makes it feel like it goes too long.
Okay. All right. Eric, what about you? What do you feel that Terraforming Mars did not do very well?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo almost everything that Greg said, but louder.
Okay. That's your specialty.
It's my
Being loud.
I kind of hate this game.
Yeah.
So I've got a bigger problem with like let's start with something small like the components. Greg said it wasn't a big problem. Dude, when you are playing this game for 3.5 hours and you bump the table and you're done. You're done. Like you have to like completely like, okay, well, I think I had this much. You've got so many of these and they're just cubes. They're just like these. Anyway, that's a big problem. Like the components are boring. The art, by the way, okay, you didn't mention the art, Greg. The art is wonky in this game. Like it's
I don't think I looked at a single piece of artwork. I don't know what it looks
some
like.
some of it's photography, and some of it is art, almost like cartoony art. There's a ton of cards, and the art is all over the place. The Mars board, feels like an afterthought to me. It's just a point generator at the end of the game. There is some area control stuff that happens, but it's not much going on there. It's just kind of like it's a big board. It's a big board in the middle, and you're on all you're doing is looking at your cards, which have ugly art, and there's a bajillion of them, and like by the end of the game, you're having to bring other tables over to put cards on. There's so many cards in front of you, and there's probably mistakes that are being made because, okay, how many things did I talked about before with the lichen and the ants and the comets and stuff. All this stuff is happening, and you're trying to figure out how many of these tiny boring cubes do I get to put on my ants card, or how much moss did I grow this round. It's rough. The cards end up feeling like a burden. And yes, it is way too long. I mean, I feel like there's very, very little interaction in this game. I'm just staring at these irritating cards for 3 hours, and it's like I just want the game to end. Even if I'm winning, I want the game to end. And on the worst thing, okay, well, actually, there's no high five moments in this game. There's no moment where I'm like, yeah, nailed it. No, I grew some grass this round. There's and if I'm feeling really, really ungenerous about this game, I would say that the only real decision that you have to make is your opening hand. You look at those opening hand, you just choose the best cards, you pick your lane, or if you don't want to call it that, you pick your strategy for the game, and that's it. And then everything else, you just pick cards that will fit into that strategy that you can afford. Rinse, repeat. That's it. That's the game. That's 3 hours of that. Not a fan.
All right.
Okay, Terraforming Mars fans, get them.
Yeah.
Come at me. Fight me.
Yeah. Let's get into our final thoughts about Terraforming Mars. Is there anything that you guys want to say about this game that you have not said already? And what is your rating? And should it go on our shelf? Eric?
All that vitriol, I did give it a 4.5. So I give it a 4.5, which is half a point below an average game, in my opinion. There's enough going on here where it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's just all of those things combined for me, a boo. So draft rule helps. I agree with Greg. The draft rule helps, but it just makes it go longer. It's not the worst game in the world, but when you compare it to the hype, it just lets you down even more. So I would recommend this game to people who they're not really into. Yeah. they're not really into strategy games, but they want to look like they are. So they want to have a game around that people
Wow,
will recognize and maybe play it every so often. That's what I'd recommend.
That's fighting words right there.
Yeah. Okay. Terraforming Mars, a game proposers. Greg?
I don't think I hated it as much as Eric. I enjoyed this game. I enjoy it. However, I want to bring up one point, and I deliberately did not bring this up. Tried not to bring it up during my regular review because I wanted to review Terraforming Mars on its own merits. But at the end of the day, Terraforming Mars does not exist in a vacuum. And I said earlier how this does give me a lot of similar feel to other tableau building games, which means inevitably I'm going to compare this to Race for the Galaxy, which is a game I actually enjoy a lot. And when I compare this to something like that, Race for the Galaxy has all the things I said were positive about this game, but none of the it's missing a lot of the negatives. It has a few negatives. It's way shorter, plays in under an hour, and your turns are simultaneous, right? But it gives me a lot of the same feelings I get here. So I have to ask myself, if Terraforming Mars existed on my shelf, could I ever see a moment where I'm like, you know what, I'd rather pull out Terraforming Mars now instead of Race for the Galaxy? And the answer to that is maybe, sometimes, occasionally. The Terraforming Mars does have going for it. I do think it's a deeper game. Maybe not deeper. It's a more complex game. There's more going on. There's more to think about while you're playing. So maybe if I really wanted that same feeling, but extended over 2, maybe 3 hours, maybe then I'll pull out Terraforming Mars. So for that reason, I'm giving this a 7. Is where I've been giving this. It's a game that if I own with a certain group, sure, I'll pull out once in a while. But I would say most of the time, I would just rather pull out Race for the Galaxy.
Okay, well this has to be one of the we'll pull up the ratings of everything, but I feel like this has to be one of the most poorly rated games, it feels like, that we've...
No, Splendor is much lower than this.
Splendor's lower. I gave Splendor like a 3.5 or something, 3.5.
Yeah, and I think even like it may be.
But when you compare it to the actual rating on BGG, I think this is like 8.7 or 8.6.
Oh, this is like top.
Like that.
I think this is in the top 10 right now, isn't it? I believe this is in the top 10. So I mean, we're definitely in the minority here. I think a lot of people love this game. And I do think it's a good game. Just to be clear, I had fun playing this game. It's just my rating system is really going to be compared about how many times I'm going to pull it out. And in a world where Race for the Galaxy exists, which gives me a very similar feeling, I just don't see it getting pulled out that often. Yeah. But I enjoy the game, right?
Greg's only saying that to avoid the torches and pitchforks that are going to come his way.
I always got to get the caveat.
Yeah. Well, the 50 people that watch this video, I'm sure a few of them will disagree with me.
Yeah.
Yes, our viewer group is small enough. Do I have to ask myself, do I think I can fend off 50 nerds? I think I can.
All right. Okay. So obviously then does not go on our shelf.
Actually, the only one that I was going to say, and I know Eric, no way, I would have allowed this to go Scythe.
Scythe?
Actually. Yeah, actually,
no.
I give Scythe a 6.5. I was like, if you wanted to have it, that would have been my game of compromise. But other than that, no, I'm not willing to let it go.
Okay.
I'm not.
So you're not asking to bump Scythe. You're just saying.
Well, I didn't know how you were going to react to this game.
Okay.
So I was like, if you loved it, I was going to say, okay, if you really want this on the shelf, Scythe has to go. For me, it would have been almost equal.
Interesting. You like Scythe as much as Terraforming Mars?
Yeah, probably.
Wow.
I would say they have
like a slap in the face, doesn't it, Eric?
I would say they have similar amounts of interaction, and B, no. I think the whole engine building solo side is about the same to me.
If you find a bag of something on your doorstep, it's not from me.
I see. I don't know. I don't think there's similar games at all, but I think they give me similar levels of enjoyment. Yeah.
All right. Well, so that covers it for Terraforming Mars. What are we going to cover next time?
I think we're going Azul next.
Azul. Okay. Definitely, I think something that'll be a lighter weight than sounds like this was. In the meantime, again, if you have not subscribed to us, please do that. And also, Eric and Greg are both doing their own standalone series. They each release once a month. Eric comes out the second week, and Greg comes out the fourth week, where they discuss topics that are of interest to them. And so feel free to subscribe to get notified about that as well. And if you vociferously disagree with them when it comes to Terraforming Mars, feel free to let them know, as always, just how wrong they are by leaving us a comment.
Right.
So,
Views through controversy. That's how we operate.
yeah. So,
and share this video with all the other people that claim to like Terraforming Mars and see what happens.
All right. So until then, though, this has been a piece of the action.
So I really think we should just not do multiple choice on TNG.
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
I know the answer to this one.
Yeah, without even.
Love prune juice. Well,
yeah, see, but he's only ever seen the show one time all the way through.
No, yeah, he fell in love with prune juice and he called it a warrior's drink.
It's definitely prune juice.
Yeah.
The Guinan gave it to him.
Yeah.
So let's go with C. Prune juice.
There you go.
All right, excellent.
Has to be prune.
That was
the funniest one, right?
What's that?
I said it has to be prune.
Oh, it has to be.
It's
Yes,
the funniest one.
Yeah.
I mean, Klingons drank blood wine. Raktajino was basically the drink of choice on DS9.
And that's the Klingon coffee, I think, right? Raktajino?
Yeah, it was kind of like I always kind of picture Klingon cappuccino. I don't know why.
Right, yeah. I
don't even know, actually. I don't remember the origin. And coffee was Janeway's drink of choice. So